Yeah. So the other thing I've been wanting to say really is, because I've been talking about the value of life and philosophy is about life, and I mentioned in other videos that you can tell a person's philosophy from their behavior, how they live their life, in addition to whatever, philosophy they, you know, advocate. And a related video came up, a really old, I don't know, a year old video or something, me talking the same issues with inmendham. And I saw that I end up saying that Gary hates life. And I don't really believe that. So I want to sort of correct that record. I mean, this is a shorthand for Gary's espoused philosophy, is that life is inherently negative. And the thing is, though, when I look at the behavior, okay, my view, and I apologize, Gary, for I'm skirting psychoanalysis here and whatnot, and I could be projecting. Maybe it's just what little I know of you, the cross section of you on YouTube, plus my own biases and all that crap. Okay, so kind of going out on a limb just in general to do this kind of thing, but I don't actually think I'm out on a limb. I think this is the way it really is, which is, I could see that you, Gary, or the Gary in the third person, if I'm talking to the rest of you, whoever I am talking to, that Gary enjoys life. There's the philosophy of Epicurus is really useful. I like the ancient philosopher, the schools of philosophy in terms of they're like archetypes. And Epicurus has a good one. And the theory of Epicurus is that the greater the pleasures you sought and found, the greater your miseries would be. So that there was this relationship between the two, um, a fundamental sort of relationship. And his advice, of course, was to seek the small pleasures, which I pretty much agree with. I think it's interesting, this is an aside, that a modern interpretation, a more proactive interpretation of that is that, also you can seek extreme pleasures if you're willing to pay the prices and pay the suffering, if the suffering is something you can handle. See, I mean, Epicurus said, seek the small pleasures in life, picnic by the ocean, and you'll only have to face the simple miseries. But some people can handle more than the simple miseries, and they get the reward of being capable of going after the more intense pleasures, theoretically. But anyway, I see that Gary understands the pleasures of life, the simple pleasures of life, because he and I share them, basically. I mean, to me, Gary's lifestyle doesn't look bad at all. I mean, he watches bugs, he, he takes walks, he cleans a pool so he can swim in one, an afternoon by, sunny afternoon by a nice clean pool. Simple pleasure. It's quite nice. And so, to me, that's Gary. If I have to picture Gary the person, and he's enjoying life. He's doing things that interest him, and he's pursuing that. And so I don't want to say Gary hates life. It's his philosophy where he refuses um, to to say something good about life in general. He doesn't think that those pleasures of his count for much. He doesn't. He values them directly, right? He's like, I'm doing this, enjoying it. Obviously, there's a value, but he doesn't value that he values them. And so he's convinced himself not to value that he values them, and instead he actually disvalues them. He disvalues the fact that we're addicted to that cheese. So even though he values them directly, he manages to turn that into an anti-value by disvaluing that we value them, and calling that addiction. Um, so one other thing I wanted to say in this discussion is a lot of people are using addiction, just addiction, addiction. That that's a rhetorical use of that term. I mean, a regular use, and this is from somebody that complains that I'm redefining terms like interesting to mean things that hold your interest. They're supposed to be things you enjoy. You know, and meanwhile, he's going to use addiction that way. Well, I'm sorry, because clinical addictions are notable by the fact that they're not good for you, that they take a toll on you and you do them anyway, and we're trying to explain and address that by calling it addiction and studying it as an addiction. That's why we don't say, oh, you're addicted to oxygen, all the things you need. You know, you're not addicted to all your needs, the needs that actually support and help your life. You know, somebody's eating really good food, and they're addicted to good food. Well, no, that's part of their survival. So you guys think, I mean, I let you get away with it because fine, okay, you kind of characterize it as addiction, but you're just using a metaphor, and it's transparent why you're using it. You're using it so you can badmouth living and life itself. You're saying that's just an addiction. Addictions are supposedly bad. I think the irony is that if I'm addicted to oxygen, then addictions are not so bad. Addictions evidently can be things that aren't so bad. So suddenly it would lose, if I let you use it that way, it loses the weight as a big slur on life, the fact that we really want it. And, you know, I don't know, addicted to it. It's like, I think a better characterization of it is you know, why live life? Well, because it's there. It's like, why climb a mountain? You know, I mean, that's sort of cynical, sort of passive. I'm willing to accept that kind of thing, that there's not much more reason than that, but that a lot comes from that, namely everything we do to keep ourselves happy. And the other thing I'd like to say is that in this conversation, it would do well, people would do well to go ahead and be familiar with Epicurus, because it is a philosophy of there always being suffering in the world. And the issue is that we're trying to navigate between suffering and, you know, and joys. They were in a more natural state, you know, where the suffering, I think they were closer to nature, and so, you know, we feel a little more removed, you know, in a natural setting where there's no, you know, the nature doesn't care if you live or survive, die, per se, then, you know, I think there is a balance. In the human state of affairs, removed where our dangers are other humans, you know, I think that's suppressing the balance and moving the balance into the miserable side. And I agree, and that's why Gary and I agree on a lot of like social activism issues. But you know, not in the overall philosophy, and not in like the political philosophy of what the society, how it should be formed, what we should value, how we should look at a justice system, and those kinds of things. But when it gets right down to the things that ail us, you know, it's funny. Gary and I have found, you know, 3 or 4 things at least, serious things that we agree on, like IRV, instant runoff voting, and I think non-geographical representation. Anyway, we've been through those things. The reason we intersect there is because we actually do think that life can be made a little better.